I've been playing a lot of Gunfire Reborn lately, and earlier this week I finally completed my first clear of the game, but man did it take a lot of effort and learning on the fly. But that's what made it fun, was the constantly feeling of getting better and seeing how far I could get. But I do wish I would have had a way to learn some of the nitty-gritty inner works to get a head start on the obstacles to come. So much so that I came up with 5 tips to help you on your way to getting your first clear. There's a lot of guns and special text to keep track of, but more important than all of that is the elements, and the chance to apply that element. This will help out a lot in the early game: shock for shields, decay for armor, and burn for what's left of the health bar. However, something the game doesn't teach you is that combining 2 of these elements creates a third called miasma, which is by far one of the strongest tools at your disposal. Miasma absolutely shreds through health bars and makes a mockery of the first area. However, when you get to later stage, matching the elements to enemies and utilizing this combo is absolutely crucial, making it easier to clear full rooms within seconds. In the first area, you can get by without worrying about element matching too much, but when you get to the boss and in the later stages, if you're not utilizing miasma or at least using shock and decay, you're gonna have a bad time. This game relies on movement more so than anything. Standing still to get criticals in the first area is okay, but if you try to do that in the others, you'll be killed before you even know what happened. Don't be afraid of using the dash. This is absolutely crucial in arena fights. A well-timed dash can be the difference between you getting flattened or beating the boss. Strafing is your best friend. While playing through the different areas, get used to constantly being mobile. Even if you miss most of your shots at the beginning, learning to constantly move will greatly increase your chances of survival. Even if your shield is gone and you have little health left, keep moving. Outside of the first area, enemies can start creating puddles of fire and decay, and if you're hiding behind something, those elements can still get to you. The only safe way to regain anything is to shoot and run. The less enemies and less bullets and the quicker you move, the better chance you have of getting your health back. But while you're running around the area like a madman trying to recover your shields, watch out for the environment and do not, I repeat, do not run backwards. Most of the times the room will have rocks or wood structures to hide behind, but if you try and cut a corner too close, you'll get stuck and inevitably die. Same as walking backwards. I found out the hard way that when you walk into a room, the doors get barricaded behind you, and some of these fights will happen as soon as you enter the room. You gotta keep moving, but please, for your own safety, move smart. I feel like this might be the most crucial piece of advice, but it needs to be said. Do not sleep on inscriptions. This will absolutely ruin your run. You might find an upgrade for a weapon, more damage, more fire rate, everything looks okay, but then you realize that the weapon has a negative 100% reload time and fires all ammo per bullet. Not only are you burning through your well-earned ammunition, but the amount of time to reload in some of these fights, if it's not almost instantaneously, you might as well throw the gun away. You can kind of force this, however, so it's not all luck. With your soul essence, you can get upgrades to increase the chance of weapon-specific inscriptions or even Gemini inscriptions. These are the creme de la creme. Having 2 weapons with them will activate both abilities simultaneously. You could have each weapon share an element type or even increase the damage of crits based on element damage. These don't usually show up until after the second boss, but if you get lucky enough to get these inscriptions on weapons you're familiar with, the enemies in the final area will be a breeze, but it still doesn't hurt to double check on all of the weapons that drop. You never know when an upgrade will drop, but if that upgrade never drops and you need something to get you by, the craftsman can reforge the inscriptions on weapons for a hefty fine. And if you're feeling risky, red chests can also upgrade your weapons. But what are you willing to give away in return? This is by far the most important piece of advice. I'd recommend spending some time in the talent screen before a mission and reading over what your character can do. This will help you become more familiar with what your character can bring to the table and what tree you want to look out for when you get your upgrade points. This might take a couple runs to really figure out what fits your playstyle, but I'd recommend experimenting. Focusing on your main ability is always a safe bet, but you'd be surprised at the difference your secondary skill can make. When using Ow Bow, most of the skills you want to focus on revolve around your dual wield, whether it be lucky chance, damage reduction, or even ammo regen. But taking a perk to throw out 2 grenades at once while making you immune to explosive damage can really thin out crowds of enemies in a tight space. You can use Essence to reduce the cooldown of your abilities or increase the amount of grenades you carry. This game gives you a ton of different styles to work with without feeling like there's an only option. Anything can work, you just have to give it a go. What got me through was focusing on lucky chance while dual wielding and damage reduction. Ao Bao is tanky, but his shield is pitiful, so having as much health as possible is the safer option. Whereas the Crown Prince, I try and focus on stasis charges in case I get a long stun duration. But if you instead get the perk where it no longer stuns but does damage, then I go with a larger explosion radius and a chance to trigger multiple explosions. So even if you plan a build in the lobby, depending on what you get along the way, you need to be able to adapt and work with what you got. However, a way to put the odds in your favor are the hidden vaults throughout each area. These are a treasure trove with sometimes 2 upgrades to aid you. Those are the occult scrolls. And whereas they don't affect the permanent upgrades you get like the ones you get for clearing rooms, these are more supplemental like. Something like when you eat food, it heals all of your health instead of a portion, or when you apply an elemental effect, you can take a debuff but do more damage in the long run. Or when you run out of ammo, if you keep firing at the expense of your health, you'll do more damage. And in case that wasn't enough chance to get some of the options, the red chests and peddlers will hook you up too. The peddler will just sell it to you, whereas the chest makes you work for it. Give up some health or trade your scrolls away. If you use all of these outlets, you'll have all the help you could possibly want. This can be difficult, but I feel like if you master it, completing the run will be so much easier. As you're getting used to the enemies, you'll find out which ones are a threat and which ones you can leave alone for a bit. But don't take your eye off any of them, as all of the enemies need to be respected. But the guy with the minigun is more important than the lone hermit crab. For the first area, the only threats I have anymore seem to be the archers right towards the end. If you equip a decay weapon or have smoke bombs on the Crown Prince, focus this enemy first and then move on to the range shielded ones. As a general consensus, I try to focus ranged first before melee. Melee enemies you could typically outrun even with base movement speed, but if you don't pay attention to the ranged ones, you could accidentally walk through a puddle of fire or decay and then your shields are gone. And with your shields gone, you'll get picked off by anything else. In the second area, most of the enemies have some kind of ranged ability, so I try to go for whatever enemy has either a shield or armor and then whatever is the closest one. Those are usually the ones that pack the biggest punch, so focus them down above all anything else. The only time the ranged over melee rule changes for me is when I have an enemy that can either charge into me, like the heavily armored lizard in the desert area, or anything that spawns melee types like in stage 3. Usually what I do is I try to get the lizard away from everyone else and then use everything I have to dispatch him quickly, as if they land a charge attack it's almost always going to be the end of the run. However, with the spawner types, they're usually fragile enough to kill quickly, but if you don't pay attention to them, next thing you know, you'll have 4 to 5 melee guys hitting you in the back. Now, stage 3 is slightly different, whereas most everything has a ranged attack that does massive damage. I cannot count the times that a lone catfish grunt seemed to be able to one-shot me. They don't have shields, so dispatching them isn't hard, but I feel like they need to be targeted above all else. The shielded archers can be a menace, but strafing makes them miss most of the time. The only enemy I will say you need to always watch out for is the Great White. He has a Roadhog look-like appearance, and just like Roadhog has a hook that will pull you to him. If this happens, 8 times out of 10 you will die. You'll get pulled into a swarm of enemies, and before you know what happened, you'll get jumped and have no way out. However, as you play and get used to the kinds of damage these enemies can do, you'll be able to set your own priorities depending on guns and skills. Just remember, range before melee, but don't lose sight of the melee. And there you have it, 5 tips to put you on the track to getting through some of the hurdles this game will throw at you. But again, don't be afraid to fail and experiment. This game can be really rewarding when you make something work out of nothing or find a combination of perks and weapons to decimate the enemies within. Let me know in the comments below if I missed anything or if you found this to be helpful. With that being said, I'll see you on the next one.